Only 5 weeks left until Christmas, which means I've only got 5 weeks left to finish my projects, getting my Tahoe and boat back in good working order. And yeah, I'm running out of time here. But I made progress, and this is my intake manifold out of the Tahoe. Gasket that's been giving me problems. And per Mitch's request, I was going to film this, taking it out, and do a how-to on that. But then I realized something I could do that I think would be a lot more useful is just talk about the process for working on things. Because once you understand the process, you can take on almost any job because the process is the same for everything we work on. Vehicle, boat, home appliances, computers, it doesn't matter. The process for working on things is the same for everything. There's generally only 3 reasons we work on stuff: preventative maintenance, repair, and improvement. And when I say improvement, like trying to increase the horsepower or performance, gas mileage, whatever. All right. Of those 3, repairs, that's the most difficult because we don't know where we're starting at. We're starting from nothing. Something broke, we got to fix it, and we ain't got a clue what's going on with whatever. All right. Well, that's where troubleshooting comes in. And that's the first step in working on anything, it's troubleshooting process. And we have tools just to help us with that. So we've got a multimeter for electrical issues. We've got DC test light for electrical issues for a vehicle. Automotive repair manual. And in this repair manual, in the very beginning, in the intro section basically, there's a part that says troubleshooting. And it tells you where to go for all the different components of a vehicle, where the troubleshooting sections are in each chapter. Or we can just look at things and figure it out for ourselves. My lower unit for my boat here, okay, it's leaking, it's getting water inside and mixing with the oil. Well, the outside's not cracked, so the water's getting in from somewhere, so that tells me the seals are bad. Then my Tahoe, the issues going on with it were pretty self-evident. Or if we have, whatever project thing, and we have no clue what's going on, we just go to the internet and type in, okay, my truck's doing this, my dishwasher's doing this. Hit search. More than likely, somebody knows what the problem is, and they can explain it, or go to YouTube, type in your problem, you can find a video usually on it. So that's the troubleshooting process, gives us a place to start. And it takes us from being in a place of not knowing and feeling overwhelmed, which generally the reason we feel overwhelmed is we just don't know. Well, it gives us a starting point. And that starting point isn't always going to be right. We might have to change multiple parts before we finally figure out the exact cause of something, or we may get into tearing down parts of our vehicle and get in there and find out, oh no, something else was actually wrong. All right, so we're not always 100% here, but it just gives us that starting point, and that's important. Once we have starting point, it gets easy after that. Next is disassembly, and this is where all of our traditional tools come in: ratchet and socket, wrenches, screwdrivers, nuts and bolts and screws are mechanical fasteners. These are the tools we use to undo those mechanical fasteners, to disassemble things. And it can also be the most complicated part, this disassembly process. This repair manual here, 90% of it, 99% of it's removing stuff, how to take all of this apart. So it can get a little overwhelming. And on top of that, it's not just removing the one part we need. Oh no, that'd be way too easy. Oftentimes with complex things, we have to remove a lot of stuff to get to the one thing we need. In the case of this intake manifold, I had to disconnect gas lines and remove wiring harnesses and all of the duct work on top for the airflow and all kinds of electrical connectors. And that was just to get to this so that I could undo the bolts holding this in. And then I could finally remove this. And then changing my gaskets in here, that's super simple. It's just removing everything else to get this and then to get this out. Okay, and that's the challenging part, and it can feel very overwhelming. We just have to take it one step at a time. Literally, that's the whole trick to disassembly. Okay, this is also where research comes in, whether it's a repair manual or your internet search on how to remove something. It's going to tell us the steps, and we can figure out the steps. I could see everything that was in the way of this. But the thing is, how to take each item loose, apart. Okay, the electrical connectors for the fuel injectors here. Last time I took an intake manifold out, it had a carburetor on top of it. This was new to me. I had to do some research just to see how to take this one connector. Well, actually, there's 8 of them, but they're all the same. How to take that connector loose, how to disconnect it. And I'm glad I did that research, because I never would have figured out that connector on my own. There was nothing intuitive about it. And then for the other things, like wiring, I could see, okay, there's this wiring harness is attached here. Okay, I can remove this bolt, it'll come loose. The vacuum hose here. I could have took it loose at the intake manifold, or I could have took it loose on the other end. It looked to be easier to take loose at the other end, and I didn't have to worry as much about breaking a little fitting. Pulled it loose at the other end. I had options. We just have to look at each little thing and take it one item at a time. How do I disconnect this part and remove it? How do I disconnect this part and remove it? And hopefully we've done our research beforehand so that we know if we're going to need specialized tools to take certain things apart. And our general tools can do a lot, socket and ratchet. All right, but for some things I needed an extension and I needed a swivel on the end to get to a particular nut or bolt to take it loose. Wrenches. The reason wrenches and ratchets both exist is sometimes you can only get to a nut with the nut running this way. You can only get to the top of it from 90 degrees. There's something in the way up here. It's a little small opening. It's where your wrench comes in. Other times it's completely surrounded by stuff and down in a hole, and the only way you can get to it is something that's parallel to the bolt, your ratchet. And if it's really deep, you need the extension. All right, that's why we have a variety of tools, and our normal tools are very flexible and can handle a lot. Sometimes we need very specialized tools though. And in the case of the engine that this is attached to, any of us could work on the inside of that engine. As complicated and complex as that is, we could. Just almost none of us have a place where we can work on that engine and all of the specialized tools needed to do it. That's why I would never try to go inside the engine for my Tahoe. I mean, I just don't have the stuff. Starting with the engine stand just to hold it in place while I tried to work on it. But again, just don't get overwhelmed. Take it one thing at a time till you get to what you need to get to. And take lots of pictures along the way, because that's really going to help you in the reassembly. Now for what's hopefully the easy part, just repair or replacing our part. We finally got to it. And in my case, I've just got to pull this old gasket off and replace it with a new one. So all of that work just to do this. But while I'm in here, I'm also going to do some preventative maintenance. So I'm going to change some other seals and some things that are on the block. I've done the hard part, the disassembly, and repair or replace. Most often we're replacing things. Something broke, we're replacing it with something that isn't broke. But oftentimes if we take our time to figure out what's going on with whatever part, a lot of times we can repair it. Maybe we need to clean an electrical connection, or we need a wire's frayed and we just need to splice it back together, a new splice or something like that, or clean the brushes in a small motor or something. But the easiest route generally is replacing, which is what we usually do. Either way though, we're almost done at this point. And we're finally on the home stretch, reassembly. And reassembly it can be more overwhelming than the disassembly. The disassembly, everything was at least where it's supposed to be. For reassembly, we got to put it back where it's supposed to be. And something complicated with lots of parts, yeah, it can be daunting. It's where all of those pictures come in. And when you take your pictures in disassembly, take them from different angles. That can make all the difference during reassembly, because you can't see this one connector from an angle, but from a different angle. Okay, that's where it goes. And something else to keep in mind with reassembly, most of the parts you're going to remember where it goes. This, the intake manifold. I know exactly where it goes and the bolts that hold it in and where this vacuum hose here goes. Reattach the stuff that you know where it goes. Start there. And then just through the process of elimination, a few things that you just can't remember where it went, well, that's all that's going to be left by the end. And at that point, there's only going to be one or two places they can go. And then it's, this connector, it only reaches to here and it only fits in this slot. Okay, that must be it. And hopefully whatever guide you use for the disassembly, be it a YouTube video or repair manual, hopefully it explains the reassembly process also. And we can run into some more complicated things with reassembly, like having to torque our nuts and bolts to a specific torque value. That's where torque wrench comes in. And torque wrenches are specifically just for assembly and reassembly. Regular sockets, wrenches for disassembly. We don't need to torque everything. It's just that's where that research ahead of time comes in, so that we know what to torque. And it's, again, just like the disassembly, just take our time and one connection, one thing at a time, until finally it's back together. Now, I know I glossed over a lot of things there, and I probably made it sound a lot simpler than it is actually working on things. But most things, when we break them down, they're really not that difficult. The big thing's just not getting overwhelmed. And then there's certain things we just really have to know, so we don't mess things up when we put them back together. And that's when we're getting into really precise, sensitive things like inside an engine. There's some things we do just have to know there, but most of it, though, is pretty simple. It's just that's where your research comes in ahead of time to figure out, is this something I can take on or not? But most of it we can, and with just basic, simple tools. All right, now, one thing I didn't cover there, safety concerns. All right, there are a lot of safety concerns when we go working on things. If you have to jack a car up, that car can fall on you if you're under it. All right, so we need to have jack stands, and we need to be aware of all the precautions we can take for that. And with electrical things, we need to be very careful with electrical stuff and make sure there's no power going to whatever. Well, that's something that we need to be mindful of when we're doing our research on how to work on whatever. And the more we do this stuff, the easier it gets. And this is the sad part here. Something complicated like this, by the time I get this all cleaned up, everything changed, it all back together, reassembled, I'm going to be extremely familiar with this, and the next time I'd be able to go in there and pull it right out, put it right back together, and it wouldn't take me a fraction of the time. But if I did my job right, I'm probably never going to have to go back in and work on this again. That's the catch. Once we finally figure it out and get it all back together and working, we might not ever have to go in on that again once we finally know what we're doing. One of life's ironies. I really hope this helps some of you out, not just now, but in the future. Maybe this inspires you to want to tackle a difficult project one day. And being able to work on stuff can be a real blessing. It can be a curse too. It's time consuming, and you busted knuckles and you're going to bleed some, and that's part of it. But there's just something about really knowing your stuff And once you work on your stuff, you know it. And if you get into a project and you do get overwhelmed and you have to bring in a professional, that's okay too. You're still going to know way more after that than you did before, and that's what life's about, is learning. All right. Now, for myself, made progress on the Tahoe. I'm pretty sure I was correct on my call on this gasket, because I can see my bad spot right here. I know exactly where my air leak was coming from because it's so dirty in this spot. And I could see on the block itself, on the mating surface, that it's really dirty there. That's my issue. So now I just got to get this cleaned up, swap these out, get it back in, and I'm going to be a long ways toward getting my Tahoe running right. And for the boat, I'm still waiting on seals for it. Yeah, I've been waiting for a while for those. I'm going to have to call up the people, and with all the supply chain shortages and issues and all that, it takes a while on some stuff still. And keep this in mind also. That's where our preventative maintenance comes in, is so that hopefully we don't end up in a situation where we are in a hurry. But there's a saying from the Bible, those that have everything, to those that have everything, everything will be given. And to those that have nothing, everything will be taken away. That's a really powerful statement there, and there's a lot of truth in it. Being able to work on our stuff, doing preventative maintenance, it keeps us from getting in those situations that really hurt us, like suddenly our vehicle isn't working and we can't get to work. All right, that could cost us a job in a certain situation. That could be very detrimental. And I think that's what that saying's all about. To those that have everything, everything will be given. Those that have nothing, everything will be taken away. When we have nothing, we're right on that edge, whether it's being dead up to here or whatever it may be. We put ourselves in vulnerable situations where the least little thing could just absolutely set us back for years. I think the being able to work on stuff goes a long ways towards making sure we're not in nearly as vulnerable of a situation. All right. Anyway, I'm going to get this back together, and right now I got a little decent weather, so I got to make hay while the sun's shining. God bless, and y'all have a great day.